So this is Card Games TV1 podcast episode 13. Playing with skill versus playing without skill. So, it should be a simple concept to understand. Most people already know this by default, even if they don't know it consciously, like they're not aware of it, is what I mean. But they do it, and it's obvious they do it. And they're okay with it, right? They're okay with playing without skill, right? Those are typically people who net deck, right? People who will buy like a structured deck, right? And so forth and so forth, right? It's because the skill I'm referring to is they don't develop the skill of building a deck, right? Or understanding the game itself in its entirety, right? Mastering the game. Because the reason, right? Once you understand the game, then deck building is a reflection of it. It's an understanding, right? Because you got to look at the game itself as a problem, right? A problem that needs to be solved. Deck building helps you solve that problem, right? The problem you have is your opponent has 8 life and you're trying to take all 8 of the life away. So you're trying to win the game. That's the problem, right? The problem is you have an opponent, right? And you want to beat your opponent, but your opponent's going to try to stop you, right? So you need to come up with ways to one, do damage, but also be able to respond to, circumvent, outplay, whatever terms you want to use, whatever your opponent does, right? Your opponent's job is to stop you from winning. Your job is to win, right? That should be your goal. Your goal should be to win. And your opponent's, job is to stop you, and vice versa, right? When your opponent's trying to win, your job is to try to stop them from winning, right? That's why win cons is important, right? You need to know how you're going to win. You can't hope to win. You can't just build a deck or grab a deck and learn how to use the deck and hope you win. That is a noob mentality to think that the way you win anything, especially card games, is through luck. It ain't. You can lose through luck, not necessarily win. Now, is it possible you can win through luck? Yeah, but that luck factor is your opponent had bad luck. Your opponent drew bad, so you won just because they couldn't play the game right. Like, for example, I use Magic. If you don't draw enough lands to play the cards, your strategy, your win con, of course you're not going to win because you can't do what your deck is designed to do to win, right? But you got to make sure that your deck is designed to win. So that's why, skill comes into a factor. Sometimes you might have a deck that doesn't have a win con, right? That doesn't have a clear way to win the game. But you understand, but through your skill, aka experience, right? You know enough about the game to understand you could do some, simple basic stuff that can win you the game. For example, you start off with a leader. So obviously, that's a guaranteed attacker. If you can last 8 turns, for example, right? And you can get your leader attack to go through and deal damage 8 times, you'll win, right? That's simple. Doesn't require genius to figure that out. That's simple enough. That's why the first 4 turns, you definitely need to try to do as much damage as possible, right? I've said this many times before. The first 4 damage is the easiest. The next 2 requires a little effort, but the last 2 is the hardest because your opponent's not going to make it easy for you to win the game. That's their job, right? Is to not let you win. You got to find ways to win. Now, I use burn damage as my main win con, my way of circumventing that problem, right? The dealing last 2 damage issue. So, whenever new cards come out, I'm always looking to see if there's any burn cards, any cards that can help, or at least anything that can help me deal the last 2 damage, guaranteed, right? Because it's not a win con if you can't guarantee you can win with it, right? It has to be guaranteed as in you play it and you get the result you want, right? It's not truly a win con if you play something and it doesn't really work. Like, it might work or it might not work, right? Then that's not really a win con. Because some people will call things win cons that really aren't win cons. It's like, that's not a win condition. That's just you hoping that your opponent won't try to stop you from using that card to win. So you're hoping that your opponent lets you win, not that you actually have a way to win. Reliable. You got to have a guaranteed win con. So that's the importance of of coming up with a win con. So since my goal is to get my opponent down to 2 life and then burn them for the last 2, or find a way to sneak a double strike that can't be out comboed or negated or blocked, and win that way. And that's where UA attackers come in, unstoppable attackers, battle cards, or even unisons. They can even have unisons. They have effects. Shit, it'd be crazy to have a leader, right, that has an ability that makes it where your opponent can't combo. So then all you have to do is remove any blockers through some skills, right? Wait for your opponent to be tapped out, and hopefully they don't have free negates, right? They don't have like a dimension magic or a testing that position or something like that. Some way of stopping your attack for free, right? So you want to put them in a position where it'd be hard for them to do so, and hopefully your lead, whatever you're attacking with has the ability that your opponent can't combo. Therefore, you don't have to worry about comboing, right, at all. But the main thing is the fact that you can get that attack to go through, which is the most important thing. So basically, that's why I go for burn, because burn doesn't require me to attack, doesn't require me to get rid of blockers, worry about negates, and so forth and so forth. That's why I go that route. Now, for the people who want to go the attack for game route, okay, then you have a harder path, right? You have a harder win con to achieve than my win con. Mine is just burn, which is simpler. Doesn't require a genius to burn somebody, right? Just play the card, it does damage, you win. So I'm going the easier route. You want to go, if you're going the harder route, winning through attacks, then you got bigger barriers. I'm just totally avoiding the barriers. I'm totally avoiding blockers, negates, and my opponent's hand size by burning. See, solution meets problem. So I found a solution to problem, which is winning through burn. So, but if you want to go through win through attacking, then you need UA attackers, right? Unstoppable attackers. So again, skill is having the knowledge and the ideas and experience to make plays that get you from point A to point B. Now I explain a basic game concept, and this comes from experience, right? Like I said before. So like I was saying, the first 4 damage is the easiest. The next 2 requires effort. Last 2 is the hardest. So you have to have a strategy for that, for the last 2 damage, more so than the first 6 damage. First 6 damage, you don't have to even plan out how you're going to deal those 6 damage. Those tend to be the easiest for you to do with the most basic skill. The last 2 is the one that requires a plan, a strategy. That's where skill comes in, right? Your understanding of the game, your understanding that, there are free negates and free blockers. Blockers exist, and some leaders have some effects that can protect them, from an attack and so forth and so forth, which is why I try to avoid winning through attacks and try to win through burn, because it's harder for your opponent to stop burn. Granted, they created like one Vegeta card that can, I think it's a Vegeta, is it a Goku card? I think it's a Vegeta card. They can stop burn, or at least try to mitigate the burn damage. But that's basically about it. But typically, you could just burn your opponent. Granted, your opponent could try to play counter plays to try to stop you from playing whatever you're using to burn. Like if it's a battle card, they could try to use a counter play like a Godzilla Trunks or something to stop you from playing your battle card that burns. But there are some unisons to burn. There's some extra cards to burn. Not many, but there's some. So that's a factor. But typically, there's a good amount of battle cards that burn. Don't remember if most of them have deflect. I think one does. 1 or 2 definitely does have deflect. I think there's a 5-drop Goku 8 that I use that does have deflect. Definitely has deflect. So that'd be hard to counter that and prevent the burn damage, which is great, right? That's my goal, to play it, win just through the effect alone. So with that aspect, right, the simple damage output, it's not that hard to get your opponent down to 2 and then try to finish them off that way. Being able to defend, right? you need to always try to get an extra turn. So you always have to think defensively instead of offensively. But like I already explained, dealing with the first 4 damage, right, or the first 6 damage, I should say, it's not rocket science. It's not that hard. Even a new player can do that. Even a person who's not even trying to win the game can do that. I've made videos, showcasing how to play a certain deck, play play the turn 2 card, the turn 3 card, like where all I was doing was just playing certain cards in a certain order, turn by turn, just to showcase, why the cards are in the deck and, how, you're supposed to play the cards per turn. You have the turn 2 card, turn 3, turn 4, and so forth and so forth. But still, even though that's all I'm really focusing on, I'm still able to deal a lot of damage to get my opponent down to 2 life. Because that's not hard. That's not difficult. This game is not that difficult. Especially you have leaders in the game that that involve taking life in order to activate effect. Some battle cards and unison have the effect of taking life to activate effects. So because that stuff exists, and some people do use those types of cards where they take life in order to activate effects, that right there is making it so much easier for you to get your opponent down to 2. Even without you trying, your opponent typically gets themselves down to 2 life. So that right there already makes the game easy. It's not that hard to get somebody down to 2 life. Usually they either get themselves down to 2 life, or you just attacking with just the leader, or a leader in a unison, or a leader in a battle card, whatever, right? It's more than enough to get your opponent down to 1 life. Down to 2 life, at least. With very little skill, right? Very little effort, but you did it. One thing to understand, right? You have to understand math, right? The combo math. So you have to understand that you want a minimum of your battle cards to have 15k, which is better than 10k. Years, like at least a year and a half ago, 10k, was a good starting point. And of course, 15 was awesome, and 20 even better, and so on and so forth, right? But 10 was at least minimal. But over time, it's like now you got to do 15 and up. 20 being better, of course. You want to start 20 and up. So swinging with 15Ks and 20Ks are more preferred. I was doing the whole 15K thing for for almost a year, but then I went to nah, I need more 20Ks. I need the deck to have more 20Ks, the deck to have more 30Ks, maybe some 25Ks. Just between that range, between 20K and 30K, try to fill the deck up with as much of those as possible, right? So there's been some unisons, they're 20Ks. So of course I play them because they got the 20K base, right? Some 30K battle cards, whether they be skillless or not. Hopefully they have some way of cheating them out, way to play them for less. Whether it be overwhelm or rival, whatever, right? Or ramp up into playing them, and so on and so forth. So always trying to find ways to play out these numbers and take advantage of that, because that requires less combo out of your hand, so you don't have to think as hard. You just play a 30 drop and swing. Your opponent has to do all the thinking. Once you do that, you have to think if they want to negate the attack or block it or spend 20K from their hands to out combo the attack. So you're putting them in the position of having to think and try to be skillful and try to weigh their options, try to determine cost versus risk versus reward. Basically, like, is it worth risking 20 combo power from my hand to stop this attack, or just taking a hit? Which one would be better, right? So you put them in that situation. You always want them to choose to take the hit option, right? So when they take the hit option, right, that helps you get closer to winning, right? Because you need to deal them 8 damage. So every hit every damage you land counts, right? Counts towards your end game, right? Your win con, which is you winning the game. So even though I'm saying that that not much skill is needed I'm obviously explaining the game in a simple way that it's easy to essentially win. It's not that hard to win. Therefore, very little skill is required, obviously. But that's just the basic understanding of the game, that it's like, yeah, the game is that simple that it shouldn't require too much skill to win. But, however, you do have an opponent. I just explained the simple basic aspect of the game. Your opponent is called a variable. Your opponent changes the fact that the game is simple, because your opponent's going to react to whatever you do. Your opponent is going to try to stop you from winning. Right? There's times where you're like, you're like, oh, I have the advantage. I have more cards in my hands than my opponent, and I have a double strike. All right, I'm gonna attack, and I'm gonna dump my whole hand into attack, and I'm gonna win. And then you go for it, and then even though they have less cards in their hands than you, they still manage to out-combo your attack. Maybe because they had a couple super combos, and, but they have more super combos than you. And, maybe the super combos they use let them draw cards, and they drew more battle cards, so they were able to combo more. So at some point, they were able to out-combo you. Even though it looked like you should have won, based off of the current appearance of the game state, those extra variables, the drawing of having the super combos, drawing from the super combos, for example, and those factors, the fact that they had a lot of battle cards to combo in the first place, which means they didn't draw a lot of unisons or extra cards. They drew a lot of battle cards, so it allowed them to out-combo that attack that you went all in on. Now, I prefer not to go in a scenario that where you combo out your whole hand, right? I'd rather you combo defensively than offensively. So that's why the whole attack and then dump your whole hand into the attack. Like, that was cute back in the day, around set, up to set 3, maybe even set 4. But after those sets, that idea of comboing your whole hand for game is just not viable as it used to be. Because there's probabilities your opponent can out-combo, or they have a card that once they combo with it, it can out-combo. It can bounce one of your cards in your combo area back to your hand, or send it to the drop, or warp or something. Or maybe they have an effect, they do some type of rival play, right? So they KO your battle card. So all that comboing was pointless, because now you lose your attacker because they KO'd it through an arrival play, and then you lost your whole hand in the process. So even though you were trying to win because you had a bigger hand size than your opponent, the fact that they had an arrival play, they had a strategy that can stop that, right? That can prevent that from mattering, and it costs them less cards to beat your strategy. It's not the best strategy. So that's why I'd rather not go the combo your whole hand strategy. That's why I like the Mirror Champa strategy, where you play Mirror, Creative Absorb, and he gets really strong. So you don't have to combo. You could, of course, to make him stronger, but you don't have to. Keep your resources. That's why I'm not a fan of comboing, because that's just a waste of resource. Like, using it defensively, I understand, right? You don't want to lose, so combo not to lose, if that's all you got. If you can't negate, you can't block, combo. Gotcha. Totally understand. Part of the game. But comboing to attack should not be a thing. You shouldn't be wasting resources just to attack, just to try to deal damage. You should just play better cards, right? Cards with stronger attacks that puts your opponent in a position where they have to combo a lot to prevent damage, not you comboing a lot to try to deal damage. That shouldn't be the case. So that's something I figured out many years ago. So that's why I don't do much comboing. I barely play super combos, because it's like, I'm not trying to combo. Like, if I use a super combo, it would be defensively, but that's about it. For all that, I'd rather play a negate or a blocker. Why waste time trying to play 2-3 super combos to try to out-combo an attack when I could just block it or negate it? So that's just my train of thought, and that comes from experience. Experience equals skill. Skill, comes from experience, right? You play, test, you practice, you get skillful. So the game is simple. And the idea is for you always to make it simple for yourself. Always make the game hard for your opponent, right? Make it hard for them. Make it where they gotta be more skillful, right? They gotta make more decisions, right? They gotta use their experience, and they're not as experienced as they should be. right? Then that gives you an advantage because you made the game hard for them. You made them have to be skillful in order to combat you, as opposed to just, having good cards per se, right? Now, now playing without skill, it is the idea of just, playing, good cards, right? Perceived as good cards, right? Now, not saying that they aren't good, it's just they're typically perceived as good, and a lot of times they're not as good as a lot of people perceive them. Like, they're good for people who are not that good. I'm gonna say it, bad players. There's cards that bad players think are amazing, but they really aren't. And then and you got some good players that think those cards are amazing as well, but that's just that's just a viewpoint. You could be really good at the game and still think like a noob, right? If that makes sense. You can still think like a bad player even though you're a good player, right? Because, for example, a really good player can play without, let's say a really good player can play without Android 17, Turning the Tide. Let's say that, right? Turning the Tide is a great card, really good card, right? Even a bad player can win with that card. That's the whole point. It's so good that you don't have to be good in order to win with it. You just gotta play it, resolve the effect, attack with it and your leader, GG, right? Deal the last 2 damage and win. Like I said, the first 6 damage is the easiest, the last 2 is the hardest, but if you have Android 17 Turning the Tide, it's easy winning. You a attacker, right? Because you guarantee your opponent can't out-combo. You make sure that they have no blockers. Definitely don't have to worry about negates because they have no hands. So they can't out-combo because they got no cards in their hands. They can't negate because they got no cards in their hands. And you make sure they have no blockers. So, easy peasy, right? That's the whole point, right? You don't need skill when you got Android 17 Turning the Tide. But then, but like I said, a bad player can play that, but a good player can play that too, right? It's a good card. Why wouldn't you, right? But it doesn't constitute you as a good player noticing the obvious, right? It's like, well, it does obvious. Even a bad player would notice that Android 17 Turning the Tide is busted. You don't have to be a good player to notice that. That's just common sense. That's how you know it's a really good card, because it's obvious even to bad players that it's a good card. And of course, good players would notice it because it's just common sense. Obviously, it's a good card. So good. And part of what makes it good is that it's easy. It's easy to use, easy to win with. So, so that basic understanding is like, well, obviously, bad players would use it, and they'll make them look like they're good players just because they just happen to have a really good card. Now, if you take that card away, right, a good player will still be a good player, but a bad player won't be good, right? They'll obviously be bad because they needed the Android 17 to be good, but without it, they're not good, right? That's how sometimes you see the difference. Like I said, good players do play certain cards that even bad players play, vice versa. Especially with the fact that we have the internet, right? A lot of people tend to net deck. A lot of people tend to go online and look at what other people are doing. So most bad players will look at what the good players are doing and then copy them because they're trying to gain the good player strategies, right? They're trying to mimic the good players, which in turn makes them think that makes them a good player too because they're doing the same. I've met many people like that, talked to people like that, would think that because they're playing a certain specific deck that won a tournament, even though they were not the one that won the tournament, it wasn't them who went to the tournament with that deck to win. It was somebody else who went to the tournament, won the tournament with a deck, and this person net decked them. But this person wants to claim the victory, right? Want to claim the credibility of the person who won the event. When the irony is, right, what the reason why the person won the event with the deck they were playing with, it wasn't the deck. It was them. So a lot of times that's the irony. It was that they were a better player than their opponents. So they beat them with the deck because they were a better player. They were better at understanding the game. So they made better decisions than their opponents, made less misplays, made less bad plays, right? So they won because they were a better player. But people out here, net decking wouldn't know that. They'll think, oh, he won because of the deck. No, he won because they actually was good. Or she. Women can play card games and win, right? So the person won. Yeah, give the person credit. The disrespect is thinking that, oh, it was the deck, so I'm gonna copy the deck, and that automatically means I'm great. No, because think about how you copy the deck. You think that the deck is why the other person won, so you copied it. But when you have the deck, you think you're great, like you're a great player because you have the deck. Like, no, the deck doesn't suddenly make you great. Just like you didn't think the deck made the player great. No, you discounted the person was a great player, which is why they were able to win with the deck. You want to give the deck credit for the victory, but when you have the deck, you want to claim the victory as if you're good because you have it. I have this deck, therefore I'm good. It's like, no, that doesn't transfer that way. You don't transfer skills that way. You can't copy somebody and think you're an exact copy of them, right? You're mimicking. That's why I should use the word copy, because copy means an exact, duplicate, right? It's pretty much the same thing. No, you're mimicking. So you're pretending. You're acting like someone else, trying to do what someone else does, but you ain't, right? It's like trying to mimic Michael Jordan. Well, you ain't Michael Jordan, so you ain't going to be like Michael Jordan, right? You could try, but you're not going to be exactly like him. And that's the difference between, having skill, playing with skill, playing not with skill. Without skill is you're playing, you rely heavily on cards, you heavily rely on your deck build, the ratios of the deck. Sometimes people do the whole ratio thing, like they'll play 3 copies of a card, 2 copies of another card, for example, because they're trying to make extra space in their deck for more options, for more cards to try to play with. Instead of picking, a small group of cards, like let's say picking 10 good cards and mastering them and try to find different ways to use them while you're playing the game to win, right? Instead, it's like, nah, I need like 30 different cards in my deck for like different matchups or different situations. I'm gonna need this card to draw cards, but I'm gonna need this card to make my opponent discard. I'm gonna need this card to KO a battle card. I'm gonna need this card in order to summon a battle card. I'm gonna need this and that. Like always trying to add. I notice that a lot. People do the whole play less than 4 copies of a card because they're trying to make space for more options. They want more options. They want like infinite options because they're hoping that, because the way they play the game, the way they think is that the game is random. You never know what's going to happen. Therefore, they're trying to have as many options, and they're actually making the game more random, because they're making the deck more random by having so many different options, so many different effects in their deck, hoping that at the right time they'll have the right effect for the right moment. Like, yeah, good thing I have this one copy of Black Mass Saiyan in my deck. Did I say the right name? Yeah, Black Mass Saiyan. Because you never know, I might go up against a certain deck where this card be good. Like, yeah, but the fact that sideboard exists, I don't use sideboards, but the fact that it exists, you could just put those extra cards, those cards you want to use for certain matchups, and put in your side deck like most people do. The fact that you're trying to main deck these options, these, you never know what might happen in the game. It's like, but you should know. You should know what you're trying to do. If somebody does something unique or different or random, something you've never seen before, so it doesn't matter. Okay, they did something random, right? Just focus on the fact that you need to deal damage. I've played against certain decks where I barely understand what their effects of their cards did or their strategy. Like, they were doing some stuff, and I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. Oh, that's cool. Oh, okay, that card does that. Like, I'm looking at it in amazement, because it's like, okay, this is cool. I'm seeing some stuff that I haven't seen before. Like, I'm unaware of these effects, this stuff, right? But ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, that's cool. I've seen somebody literally like play a whole bunch of cards, right, and do a whole bunch of stuff just to end up with like one battle card. And it's like, wait, you did all that just for that one card? That one card is not even that strong. It's not going to beat me. I'm going to get rid of it. Like, you really did all that. You spent that much time, that much effort playing some elaborate combo just to bring out that card, that battle card. And it's like, that was not even worth it. All that wasn't worth it. You were better off playing a basic battle card, right? You're better off playing a 30k skillless battle card, swinging with it, and then play Champa and turn into a 40k double strike for all that. You were better off doing that basic ass play, or playing Bodyguard Legend for free, attack, Champa, right? Bang, 25k double strike. You're better doing that than all this extra shit you did to even end up with a 20k double strike, for example. It's like, what, really? You can make a stronger 20k attacker playing Overrealm or playing something else. You can use your leader with Champa and have a 20k double strike. Why do you waste time with this whole elaborate, Union Absorb combo trying to bring out a 20k double strike? Like, that wasn't worth it. As an example, I've seen some lackluster strategies, but that was the point. It's like sometimes people do too much for nothing. It's like, really, you did all that, and what you brought out wasn't even important. Sometimes I'll see certain decks that have like certain engines, like, oh yeah, I splashed this Bojack engine to the deck, blah blah blah. It's like, alright, that's cool. But then it was lackluster. It was like, okay, why was it in the deck? It barely did anything. I didn't see the real value of the card. Maybe just because my opponents weren't that good with the cards, that I didn't see the value, didn't see like something amazing out of it. Or maybe it's just because I'm so used to amazing things, or just because the way I play, a lot of stuff like this doesn't matter. And that's the main point I'm trying to make, is that a lot of times when I play, I barely pay attention to what my opponent is doing. I mean, I try to pay attention enough to make sure they're not cheating, but a lot of times certain things slip through. I might not notice certain things because I'm really not paying attention as much, because they're not doing anything that I care about, right? Because I'm playing the game in a specific way, which is to do 8 damage. I already have my game plan. I already know what I need to do to win. So whatever my opponent's doing is irrelevant. I'm not going to go try to stop them from playing the game. I'll let them do what they're doing, play the strategies and combos and so forth. That's why I try not to play counter plays. Definitely play counter attacks. I'm a fan of that, obviously. But I don't try to play counter plays. Like right now, the only counter play I really play is Vegeta, Exploiting Weakness Vegeta. It's the only good counter play, because he counts as like a board wipe slash turn ender, or whatever you want to call it. Like he works a lot like Topo, but it's a counter play. So, and I like combining it with Topo or something similar, so that way I can get the most out of him. But you get the idea. Is like, he's really the only counter play I play, because what's nice about him is that I can play him on my turn as a basic board wipe, or play him on my opponent's turn as a basic board wipe. So it's just that option. So far, that's the only counter play I really fucks with. But every other counter play, not really. Gas Ceiling Traps, I don't care. Charismatic Villain Frieza, I don't care. I have had put Charismatic Frieza in some decks just because I needed a free 5-drop that I can, go into like Cell Zeno or something, or play, or use them for some other type of play. But typically, or just to trigger an effect or something. But typically, I just don't care to use counter plays, just because I'm not trying to stop my opponent from playing the game. It's like, go ahead, play your plays, make your moves, do what you do. All I'm focused on is trying to survive, right? Trying to survive that turn and get to my next turn. Because my next turn is where I'm going to make my next play. I'm all about making my plays per turn. I'm trying to get, if I have a turn 5 deck where like my win con is on turn 5, I'm trying to get to turn 5 to win, then that's all I'm focusing on. Getting to turn 5 and winning. I don't care what my opponents do. I don't care, what effects my opponent's leader has, or unisons, or battle cards, or whatever. I don't care what my opponent's trying to do. As long as I get to my win con before my opponent gets to their win con, that's all I care about. The only time I would really care about what my opponent's doing is if their win con is like a turn earlier than mine. Then I care. You know what I mean? Like, for example, if I'm going up against a blue deck and they have Android 17 turning the tide, right? And it's like, damn, turn 5 is when I'm going to try to go off. And right now, I'm currently on turn 4, but I think next turn, my opponent's going to have 7 energy and drop Android 17. It's like, that's going to be a problem. That's going to wipe out my hand, obviously, right? That's the problem. And which means I'm not going to have the card I'm trying to play on turn 5 on turn 5. that's going to be a problem. So essentially, they're going to play their win con before mine, right? That I see a problem. I don't, but that's just part of the game. But I mean, that is when I'll pay attention. But other than that, it's like if they're going to play their Android 17 on turn 6 instead of like turn 4 or 5, or like turn 4 or something like that. Like if they didn't ramp up and they're like, or they did ramp, but the best they could do is a turn 6 Android 17 on turn type play. Well, I'll be safe, right? Because I'll get to turn 5 before they get to turn 6. Because they'll go turn 5, right? Then I'll go to turn 5, play my win con, and win. That's the whole idea. And as long as I succeed in my win con, them getting to turn 6 and playing turn tide is irrelevant. Because I won before they get to win. And a lot of times that's what happens. When you have a win con, it's all about getting to it before your opponent does. And that's where, prepping, skill, right, stuff like that matters, because it's like you need to make sure you get there. It's one thing to build a deck, right, or have a deck or net deck, a deck that has, good cards and stuff, but you need to know what you're doing to get to, the end result which you want, which should be win. Most people, like I said, play without skill. Therefore, the likelihood of them winning is lower. Yeah, the likelihood of them winning is lower because they don't have the skill, right? The skill to win. They're hoping they win. They're playing a deck with the intention of winning, but they don't know for a fact because they're not preparing for it, right? One of the things I like about card games is that you get to create the decks, right? You get to create what your win con, right? You get to create your reality, as it were. You get to choose. Card games are not too different from life. The decisions you make in building your deck, in playing the deck, right, with an opponent, aka life, right? Life happens, shit happens, right? Your opponent's trying to throw curveballs at you, right? Life is trying to distract you from your life goals, right? But you're avoiding them, right? You're doing your best to not let the things happen to you. Like, that's the interesting thing about card games that most people don't realize, is that it's a lot of aspects of card games is like real life. While you're trying to do something, someone else is trying to stop you from doing that something. You literally, in real life, you literally have people who are trying to stop you from achieving your goals. Let's say your dream is to own a business or something. And then you're going to have people in your life telling you you can't do it, or that it's hard. They're trying to convince you otherwise. But if that's what you want to do, and you put in the time, effort, and gain the skills to achieve that goal, you can do it if you put in the effort. And don't let let people God ceiling trunks you and stuff like that, right? Don't let people stop you from winning. That's how you'll win, is if you don't let people stop you from winning. Same thing, that goes for life, and that goes for card games. That's why it's always annoying to see how people play the card game randomly. Like, oh man, you never know who's gonna win. It's random. That's what I like about it. This card game, it's random. You never know who's gonna win. It's like, no, you're supposed to know who's gonna win. Who wins is the one who achieves a win con before the other person. So if your deck is faster than your opponent, you should win. Or if you're a better player than your opponent, you should win. It should be clear and obvious who should win. Now, granted, based off of the decisions that are made while y'all playing, right, playing a match, can change the obvious outcome, can make it where the person who should have won didn't win. That is possible, right? But the thing is, right off the bat, you can tell who's supposed to win. Whether they win or not, again, it's based off of decisions and actions that happen during the match, which is why we play the game in the first place. The reason you duel, you play against an opponent, is to see if you can win, even though you have someone trying to stop you. That's it. That's all it really is. A lot of people don't even look at it that way. They look at it differently. They're like, yeah, I'm battling. My opponent plays the battle card, and I'm trying to beat the battle card, and blah, blah. No, you're not. You're trying to win and trying to make sure your opponent doesn't stop you from winning. That's it. Your goal is to deal 8 damage, and that's it. But too many people are hung up on, oh, they have a unison, I got to deal with it. Oh, they play a battle card, I got to deal with it. They played a field card, I got to deal with it. Like, their leader has a certain effect. I gotta deal with it. Like they're so hung up on certain on the minute stuff, on this on things that are not as important as they should be. And that's how people are in real life. In real life, people do that. People focus on the small, unimportant things. Like they'll talk about, oh, I want to have a career. Like no, like they'll be talking about, oh, my dream is to be an architect. All right, cool. What are you doing to become an architect? Nothing. Right now, I'm busy, paying bills. What? Yeah, I'm flipping burgers at McDonald's so I can pay these bills. Okay, I get you got bills and you're working at McDonald's to pay them bills, but on your days off, are you trying to take some online college or going to college or doing something to make hopefully extra money to the point where you can afford to do the architect thing? Are you self-teaching yourself how to be an architect and maybe do some freelance architect work or something? Like, what are you doing to achieve your dream? Because it sounds like you're choosing to flip burgers and McDonald's to pay bills instead of achieving your dream, even though your dream can pay the bills 10 times over. You do know your dream does have a paycheck, right? If you want to be an architect, you make money as an architect. You want to be a doctor, you do make money as a doctor. Way more than flipping burgers at McDonald's. But I've seen people literally justify working minimum wage jobs because they got bills. Like, wait, what? No, find a way to cut your costs. Find a way to lower your bills. If you have a high electric bill, use less electricity then. That way you can save money and then try to achieve your dream of being a doctor, lawyer, whatever you want it to be. Those jobs pay better. And then, then get back to paying your bills. But at least you'll have money left over and you can live your life. And at least you're living your dream. At least you're paying bills with your dream, not with minimum wage. Flipping burgers at McDonald's. Like, you didn't say, oh, when I grow up, I want to flip burgers at McDonald's. Like, no. You settled for working at McDonald's, but your dream is to be a doctor. But it's sad that there's people who literally do that, who literally forgoing, whatever term you want to use, they abandon, I'll say it that way. They abandon their dreams just because flipping burgers at McDonald's pays their bills. It's like, oh, I got a roof over my head, I'm paying bills, blah, blah, blah. Like, this job is good enough for paying my bills and stuff. Like, yeah, for now. But what if the bills go up? What if rent go up? What if, cost of living doubles? Your current job can't afford that. But if you were a doctor, even if the cost of living doubled, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't affect you because you're already making quadruple the amount of money than flipping burgers at McDonald's that you could afford the cost of living going up, getting doubled. But if you're making less and then everything doubles, then of course it's gonna be a problem. So it's common sense. It's just common sense to just do better in case something, in case things happen. But at the same time, your dream was not to flip burgers. It was to be a doctor. Why not try? Don't give up. And then some people use the excuse, oh, I'm getting too old to do this, that, and the third. It's like, you're never too old to do stuff. If you're still alive, you can do stuff. Stop making excuses. Some people are talking about they're too old to do something, even though the thing they want to do requires very little effort. Oh, I wanna like talk about sports. That's what I wanted to do when I was young, but I can't do that now. Like, yes, you can. You can talk about sports now. You can make a podcast where you talk about sports. You don't need to be young to make a podcast talk about sports. You can be an old person making a podcast talking about sports. You're just making excuses, using your old age as an excuse to not do shit with your life. So the thing is, your dream is just that. It's a nice dream, but you're too lazy to make it happen. And that's bullshit. Same thing with playing card games. Some people rather net deck than to actually be good at the game. They rather, pay to win, as they say, where they'll just buy the best cards in the game. They'll, that's where the net decking comes in. They'll just copy somebody's deck, pay how much it costs to have the exact same copy of the deck, and then go around, playing people at locals or events and stuff like that, or online or whatever, right? And try to be like, oh yeah, I'm amazing. But it's like, but are you though? Because if I gave you a deck that's, far weaker than the deck you spent a lot of money on, would you be equally as good or not? And more likely you're not, because you are not really good at the game. You paid for good stuff, but you are not the good stuff, as they say. So that's the difference, again, about being the difference between playing with skill and without skill. Now, hey, choose your destiny, right? If you choose to play the game without skill, like you choose to just focus on, pay to win, as it were, just buy good cards and just, try to win that way, then, hey, do you. It's your money. That's how you want to play the game. That's fine. That's fine. Of a decision for you to make for yourself. Just don't go around, acting like, you're the best player to ever play the game, but you're not really that good at the game. You just have good cards. And, you were fortunate that that was more than enough to carry you on. Not saying you don't understand the basics of the game, you don't understand. But the point I'm making is that the game is not that complicated for you to be too skillful. Like, you don't need to be a master, right, to play this game. This game is a lot simpler. This game is more simpler than Magic, I'm going to say. Yes, Magic is more advanced. As in, it's like more complicated. So many options, because they create so many cards. And then they have different formats and this, that, and third. So it's like Magic is a lot more complicated of an energy resource management type of game, right? And they're the father of all card games, right? The originator of all the card games that we have. So show respect where respect is due. And yes, of course, Magic is going to be a lot more complicated. There's a lot more nuances. You can't just play a creature and attack in the same turn. Let's say it's haste. Dragon Ball Super, you could play a battle card and attack in the same turn. So that makes the game easier, not harder. Harder will be summoning signals. Imagine if Dragon Ball Super had summoning signals. We already know how certain decks that limit you, how hard it is for people to play the game when you're limited. Like when you play against Hachiyak, or play against a deck that makes it where you can only attack once per turn, like Android 18 deck or something, where it has the Android 21 scheme card, which essentially creates the summoning sickness effect. And where we see how people struggle with that. So imagine if the game inherently had summoning sickness. A lot of y'all wouldn't be able to handle the game. Think about it. In this game, the effect of bouncing a battle card to opponent's hand is looked down upon because summoning sickness is not a factor. In Magic, because summoning sickness is a factor, the ability to bounce a creature back to your opponent's hand is powerful because you're setting them back, and if they want to play it, they have to pay to play it again. But at least they can't attack you with it. They play and they have to wait a turn. That buys you an extra turn. And if you bounce all their creatures back to their hands, right, on their next turn, yeah, they could play them again, but they can't attack, so you have to wait another turn. You literally buy extra turns with that in Magic. In here, in Dragon Ball Super, you won't be able to, on your turn, bounce something back to your opponent's hand and not worry about them attacking with it. They'll play it again next turn and attack you with it. Granted, you prevent them from playing another card because they're just replaying the same card, but they can attack with it. It's better when they tap out, right, or they tap to play the card again. So they're using energy for the same card instead of a different card. But since they can't attack, then you get a lot of value out of that. You're setting them back a turn, which is always important. But in this game, since you're not setting nobody back with that, it's irrelevant. It's only useful when you can do it on your opponent's turn, the bouncing effect, where they tap out, play something, and then you play your effect to bounce their card back to their hand. That way they can't attack you with it. And since they're tapped out, they can't play it again. They have to wait a turn to play it. So you buy yourself a turn. The most bounce effects are usually on your turn, which makes them shitty. If you can bounce on your opponent's turn, they're more useful. Because like I said, when your opponent taps out, you play the card and bounce the card back to the hand. That's why Gasoline Trucks is good, because for free, you can counter, right? You can bounce a card back to your opponent's hand instead of them playing it. That's more useful. That's why that's a popular card versus any other card that just says bounce a creature back to their own hand. Now, bouncing a creature back to the top opponent's deck is decent, but again, they can play it and still attack you, so that's a problem. I'd rather bounce to the bottom of the deck, so that way they can never get it back. Hopefully, they can never get it back. Of course, anything that warps or KOs a battle card is always, awesome. But in this game, bouncing, returning something back to the a battle card back to the hand, it's not as good as it is in Magic, because this game doesn't have summoning sickness. But if it did, yeah, those types of effects would be awesome. Bounce that back to your hand. But bouncing comes in handy if you need to get rid of a blocker, so it still has its use. It's just not as useful, as versatile as in Magic. So in Magic, bouncing effect is more versatile than in Dragon Ball Super. But like I'm saying, is like one game requires more skill than the other. That's for sure. Because there's so many variants, so many things you have to think about. There's so many, not only different types of cards with different effects, also different types of costs. So that's also a fact. So definitely makes it more interesting. So the point is that in Magic, there's a bigger card pool. In Dragon Ball Super, the card pool is a lot smaller. One, you already know a lot of the cards people are going to play because they tend to be the most popular cards. A lot of the obscure cards that don't get play, well, part of why they don't get play is because they're not that good. They're not even worthy of being used even gimmickly or, just for fun, because they're not really that playable. So there's cards that aren't playable versus cards that are playable. And in Magic, there's tons of cards that are playable. It's just some cards are more popular than others. That's the only difference. You have a lot of playable cards, but half of that is popular versus the other half that isn't popular. But the other half is still playable. You could play it if you want to. But there's always better options, of course, but you can still play it if you want to. But in Dragon Ball Super, there's a lot of cards that are obviously good versus cards that are obviously bad. And, well, if you want to be good at the game, right, or if you want to get better results when playing the game, you're going to pick from the good cards. You're not going to pick from the bad cards and try to make them good or hope that they're good or that they're playable, because by default, they tend to not be playable. They tend to be hard to use or not even worthy of using. They're not even worth being used. Why were they printed? Why did they, Bandai create the card if the card is really not that playable? Like, it's not even worth experimenting or trying it out because it's just not that great. It's not that good, not great. Great is obviously all the cards everybody likes to use, but it's not even good. Like, we like to have good cards and great cards. People who love great cards and spend a lot of money on great cards, hey, fine, let them have the great, powerful cards, right? But let me and people who like to play budget, who like to spend less money but still have fun and be creative, let us have, good, cheaper cards, right? Instead of making it clear that the good cards are the big, shiny, expensive stuff, and everything else that's not shiny is trash. Like, no, don't make it that way. That's a bad dynamic, because you're forcing everybody to play a certain way instead of giving people options. You could play these expensive, awesome cards, or you could play these not so expensive, okay cards. That's the importance. And that's where you'll get that a lot, Magic, for example. A lot of good playable cards that aren't expensive. I've seen some cards that were like really, really good. I'm like, oh man, this card is powerful. And then find out that it was a common, it was cheap, easy to buy. And I bought some. I'm like, damn, these cards are so good. Oh my god, this creates an infinite combo. Oh man, this is a hell of a win con right here. And it didn't cost me that much. It was cheap to buy the cards. And now I have, an infinite combo for my, Magic deck. And it was cheap. I have a powerful strategy for cheap. Instead of spending a lot of money for the popular, more expensive win cons, I got me an awesome cheap win con. Which is worthy of my skill level because I can make it work. I can play it consistently and win with that cheap, costing win con. Same goes for Dragon Ball Super. I'm always looking for like the cheapest win cons. There was a time where people would complain that they noticed that I don't play like secret rares, right? SCRs, SRs, super rares, and super combos. Obviously, that was a thing. So they would notice those factors, I pointed out, like, if it was a problem, like, how are you supposed to win if you don't have those things, if you don't have super combos, SCRs, and SRs? Like, by winning the game through the most basic way of winning the game. Deal 4 damage, right, which is the easiest, then deal 2 more, which is a total 6 damage, and then try to deal the last 2 through attacks. You could attack with the leader and win that way. You could attack with the unison, a battle card, overround. Like, you could attack with a lot of cards. Your opponent wastes a whole bunch of negates and a whole bunch of cards from their hands trying to stop all your attacks, and then you're like, oh, time to overrun, Awaken Warrior Bardic, attack for 20k, double strike, GG. I've done that plenty of times. You know, so it's like, it's win by winning, right? By knowing, you know, the most basic aspects of the game, and then, you know, focusing on it and mastering. You know, that's where the skill comes in, right? Mastering that aspect of the game, how simple and easy it is to play the game. Now, again, I said it before, your opponent is what makes the game hard, because what they try to do, they try to stop you, you know. But if you understand that, you know, how they could stop you, how they could stop you with Godsend Trumps, how they could stop you with a free negate, or a blocker, or just out comboing, or the fact that super combos, yeah, super combos exist. Even though I don't play them that much, I know other people do, so I gotta take that into account, right? So I gotta, you know, when I do the combo math and try to figure out, you know, how much power my attack needs to be in order to deal damage, I gotta take to account that they are playing super combos. You know, the funny thing is with the whole super combo thing is that even though I don't use super combos that much, it's not like I don't have 10k combo power in my deck. I have tons of cards in my deck that have 10k combo power. Yes, I have to pay in energy, but so by the time I'm going for game, I have plenty of energy. I probably have like 5 or 6 energy that I can use and combo and pay for all these 10ks and combo my opponent to death. Like, if I want to go that route. So it's not like I'm missing 10k combo power from my deck by not playing super combos. I have 10k combo power in my decks. Champa, Supreme Kai, those are 10k combo power. But they have an added ability that I prefer, which is they do 2 damage. And my goal is to do the last 2 damage to win, so I'd rather have Champa and Supreme Kai when I'm going for game than super combos. Because one, these double as super combos because I get the 10k combo power, plus they give me the double strike that I need to go for game. I could turn my leader into a win con, a unison into a win con, a battle card into a win con. Like, that's the whole point. There's a method to my madness. Even if people disagree with me, I'm not wrong. So you can have a difference of opinion, difference of view, but you're still gonna be wrong. My way works. It works for me, and that's all that I care about. If it doesn't work for you, fine. You do you. Play your super combos. If it works for you, great. Play less unisons. If it works for you, great. But I play what I play because it works for me. I play the ratios I play because it works for me. And that's the whole point. If it works for me, it works for me. If there's more players out there, more people like me, they'll benefit from, you know, my advice, from my way of playing, from my ratios of my deck building, stuff like that, because they're at my skill level. Whether you think my skill level is low or high, it's irrelevant. You know, what matters to me is that this is how I play. If I'm a low tier player, well, then I'm a low tier player, and I'm great at it, right? You know, if I'm a high tier player, then I'm a great high tier player. It's irrelevant. What matters to me is me, right? What matters to me is what I think. If I think, you know, the way I play is the best way for me, then it is the best way for me. Other people thinking otherwise, well, they're wrong, because that works for you but doesn't work for me. So, and hopefully I explained both sides of playing with skill and without skill. Mainly 502 here. Down to the lower level of here. Also, moving forward, Copy that.
Good night.
Are you leaving? Awesome. Good night. Fuck Phil. The audacity. Oh shit, I'm still recording. Man, I was supposed to pause. Oh well. What was I saying? Jesus. Huh. I forgot my train of thought. That'd be the end of this.